Minister, I want to ask you about the recent changes the ICBF have made to the beef index, and particularly the impact this will have on the SCEP scheme for suckler farmers. You'll be aware significant concerns have been raised in relation to how this has been done and what it will mean for farmers and for breeders as well, and for pedigree breeders. The ICBF were before the Agricultural Committee yesterday, and while they acknowledged concerns and they acknowledged there will be a financial impact on some, they aren't willing to move to actually do anything to change it. So I want to ask you if you will intervene in relation to the outcome and consequences of these changes. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Kerrane. I'm aware of the concerns among some farmers about the recent changes to the ICBF beef index, particularly farmers that are participating in the Suckler Carbon Efficiency Programme, or SCEP as we call it for short. While I'm closely and have been closely monitoring any impact on the changes on SCEP farmers, I do remain confident that the amended indices will improve beef farm profitability and also beef farm sustainability, which is the overarching intention of the SCEP scheme. The background to this among farmers is that the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation, or the ICBF, which is the body approved in Ireland in accordance with the relevant EU legislation to conduct testing as well as genetic evaluation and publication of breeding values for dairy and beef cattle, they've recently updated beef breeding indices. This was the first major update since 2015, based mainly, Deputy Kerrane, on changing economic drivers such as feed costs and beef prices. A modest adjustment also took place based on earlier slaughter of animals, also tuberculosis, resistance, carcass specifications and lower methane output. It's my understanding that prior to the updates, continental breeds such as Charolais, Limousin and Belgian Blue were the most desirable terminal cattle breeds, and they continue to be the most desirable breeds after the changes. With regard to the replacement index, the top three most desirable replacement breeds were Aberdeen Angus and Limousin and Simmental before, and they also remain as the top three after the changes as well. So the ICBF has recently committed to convening an industry stakeholder forum to address issues and concerns which are being raised by suckler farmers and by pedigree breeders, and I welcome the fact that they're taking on this engagement and engaging in this way, Deputy. Specifically in relation to the SCEP programme, this scheme aims to provide support to suckler farmers to improve the profitability and the environmental sustainability of the national beef herd. And I understand from ICBF that 84% of 4- and 5-star animals prior to the changes will retain their 4- and 5-star status after the changes. Animals in SCEP herds whose index falls will not be impacted by the changes unless the SCEP participant sells an animal that has gone down in rating, and it's only when this animal moves out of this herd that its 3-star rating will become applicable, for example, and it will no longer meet the 4- and 5-star eligibility criteria.
Minister, I want you to be very clear in telling us if you have engaged with the ICBF, particularly in the last week when a lot of this has really come to the fore. We have people, farmers, who bought 5-star bulls because they followed what ICBF told them, and their bulls now are 2 or 3 stars. This is going to have a huge impact on them. I've spoken to one farmer who has overnight lost over €100,000. He has had to tell his daughter she will not be able to go to college because they won't be able to afford to send her. This is the real-life impact this decision has had. And yes, 84% might sound good. 16% are really at sea in relation to these changes. And the cross-party committee yesterday were absolutely unanimous and united in our ask to ICBF to pause the changes they've made to the index, to engage as they should have in the first place. There's little point in setting up a stakeholders forum after they've made the decision. This is having real impacts, financial impacts on farmers, and I want to ask you, what specific engagement have ICBF had with you in the last 2 weeks? Thank you.
Well, I welcome the engagement with the Agriculture Committee on this and the discussion around this, and any proposals or suggestions coming out of that, I'm sure the ICBF would welcome them and consider them. But the ICBF is set up with a board of which has very strong farmer representation on it, and they are considering this matter. From my point of view, the aspect that I'm considering then is the impact on the SCEP scheme, to try and make sure that in relation to where the data and the scientific evidence is showing an alteration, 2-star ratings, and as I say, 84% of 4- and 5-star animals prior to the changes are still 4- and 5-star. But if the data and the evidence around profitability and breeding merits of animals change, and the science and the data shows that, well that's the case in relation to that. And there's no changing that part if that's what the data shows. But what I'm doing is, with the SCEP programme, making sure that those who are in good faith engaging the SCEP programme and doing all the right things and continue to do the right things, that they don't lose out financially in terms of the SCEP programme. And that's why if you have a cow that's 4- or 5-star, if you're in the 16% of cows, for example, that were 4- or 5-star, if they drop below that, but they're in their herd at the moment, as long as those cows stay in the herd, they'll still get paid the SCEP money.
And that in itself isn't really following the science, because if you have a 5-star and you're in SCEP, it'll remain 5-star, and if you sell it, it's not 5-star. So, I mean, that doesn't even make sense. There has been a real lack of engagement in relation to these changes, and I'll ask you just for the third time, what engagement have you had with the ICBF? Have the ICBF been in touch with you? Because they were very clear at committee yesterday in saying that yes, there is an impact on farmers, and again you keep citing the 84%. I'm talking about 16% of farmers that have done everything in good faith, signed up to SCEP in good faith, the rug has been pulled from under them and they need to be heard. And I think it's a very reasonable ask for a very short space of time where this would be paused, where engagement would happen, where a solution is found, because anything in relation to data, science and the environment, we have to bring farmers with us. We haven't done that in this, and this is not going to work if that does not happen. So again, I would ask, will you look at the proposal that they would pause it, that they would at least bring that to their board, which they're not willing to do and which I believe they should do.
Minister, to conclude.
So there's ongoing engagement between my team and the ICBF in relation to the changes that they're making here, particularly so that any impacts on the SCEP programme can be considered. And listen, it's up to the ICBF and the board, which all the farm organisations are represented on, to do with their business, to deal with the data that's coming in and to make the changes and adjustments they're making. In relation to the SCEP programme, as such, I have paused any impact in relation to the payments for cows that are 4- or 5-star who drop. For as long as that cow stays, if a cow was 5-star and it drops to 3-star, for as long as that cow is in the SCEP programme, recognising that it started off as 5-star, that farmer won't be penalised. That cow will continue to be paid on for the duration of the SCEP programme, so that it doesn't actually impact on the percentage of 4- and 5-star cows in a herd. So I've already moved to do that because I want to see that stability within the SCEP scheme, the SCEP scheme. But of course, it is important that people do pay attention to what the data shows, and when the facts change, you have to adjust to reflect that. I'm continuing to pay people, but people should factor it into their breeding policy then as they go forward.